The Football Kickoff.
With Sky. Watch every single live Premier League game on Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.
Yeah, you are welcome along to the Football Kickoff with Sky. All the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sport. And we're not going to be here till 2026, myself, Dave Meyler and Phil Egan, but a lot of very happy Liverpool-leaning fans on the show today. Jurgen Klopp is going to be at Liverpool, in theory at least, until 2026, maybe even beyond, Phil Egan, because he says that at this stage it still energises him, which I just thought was a nice way of putting it.
Yeah, and this didn't look on the cards last season when you think back to the horrible run they were on, and obviously there was no crowds there, and you know, Jurgen Klopp had obviously, his mother had passed away, and it just looked like he was struggling. And I think the way the team rallied towards the end of last season, you know, the way he put Nat Phillips and Reece Williams in at centre half, and they got up to third place, I think he must have thought to himself, the fact that we could do that without so many of their first team central defenders showed the character that he has in the squad, which he knew anyway. But it just, you know, they've kicked on this season. People questioned, were they one-hit wonders? And the answer is no. They're still challenging for 4 trophies. So yeah, I think it's the fact that it came the day after a Champions League semi-final as well just has been an excellent week for Liverpool. And now they have to make a count tomorrow against Newcastle. Yeah,
and Jurgen Klopp was actually in our poll this morning, which we'll get to very shortly. And we will then get to Liverpool and Newcastle, which is one of the really, really intriguing games this weekend. It's the early kick-off Saturday. Definite potential banana skin for Liverpool. We'll talk about the Newcastle resurgence. David Meyler, there were obviously 2 good results for Liverpool this week. One was on the pitch, one was Jurgen Klopp.
No, 100%. I think Phil touched on it there. He's created this special atmosphere, not only around the football club and the training ground, but around the city. Everyone's behind the manager, like even the fans from afar. There's just this love of affiliation with them. I think even fans of other teams, they just appreciate what he's brought to the Premier League. And obviously it's very exciting that he's staying on. Of course, they're competing on all fronts, coming into the end of the season, trying to do the quadruple. It's going to be tough, but there is just a great buzz around the place. And, like last season was very difficult after the success of the previous 2 seasons, but definitely it's exciting times.
How many more Premier League titles will Jurgen Klopp win with Liverpool? So this was our poll this morning. Now I'm just trying to figure here, does he actually have the chance of winning 5? If he's until 2026, he could win it in 22, 23, 24, 25 and 26. Catherine is just looking at me there. So maybe Liverpool could actually win 5. So if you voted for 4 in this poll and it turns out Liverpool will win the title for the next 5 years, you kind of get that right as well. But surprisingly or unsurprisingly, it's a tough one between 1 and 2, which is effectively a split vote. 30.4% 1, 31.9% 2, and exactly 18.8% for 3 and 4. David Meyler, let's just start with this season. How much do you want them to win the league? How much do you want them to win the Champions League? If you were offered one, what would you take?
If I was offered one, I'd take the Premier League.
Yeah.
Obviously the Champions League is the Champions League. It's special. Obviously Liverpool have a great tradition in it, going back to the 80s and whatever. I just feel it's that one. Liverpool have only won 1 Premier League title. I know they've, obviously got so many league titles over the years, but it's like United have 13. It's kind of always that one that's put against them. Obviously, whenever the debate with Gerrard comes up, it's like he's not won one. So I think if Liverpool could get the Premier League title over the line this year, they will even, going into next year, they'll believe that, the Premier League title is theirs. Obviously, they had an awful defence of it. They'll want to put that right, and they'll try. They'll want to win back-to-back Premier League titles. So I think if they could get that over the line, I think that would be huge.
Phil, I firmly believe that, as you both alluded to, the Klopp situation and the love he has, a lot of it is to do with Anfield and just that atmosphere. And there is a feeling, I think, that Liverpool really would desperately love to win the title in front of their fans as well.
Yeah, it's a bizarre situation where obviously Liverpool and City are both going for the Premier League and the Champions League. And I'd say if you ask City fans, they want the Champions League. Liverpool fans want the Premier League. And obviously we saw the role reversal a few seasons ago when they went to the final day. City won the Premier League, Liverpool won the Champions League. The same thing could happen. I kind of feel
there really is every chance it could be the flip. It could be the other way around.
it could be, but for some reason, look, it mightn't work out this way. But I kind of feel that whoever wins the Premier League won't win the Champions League, and vice versa. So, but the fact is that if they do win the Premier League, they'd get to lift it in front of their home fans, and they didn't have that because of COVID. Obviously, there were streets ahead when the league was put on hold for a few months, and they came back and they got the job done. And the record books will say that Liverpool were crowned Premier League champions, but they missed out on that. The victory parade around Liverpool where people lined the streets. And do you know what? Even if they don't get it done this season, I think the fact that Jurgen Klopp is hanging around now, there's definitely another Premier League title in them. And we saw what they did when they missed out. They were straight back at it. What they've done very well under Klopp is they've followed disappointment with success. They're very good at bouncing back. And Jordan Henderson touched on it when it was brought up about Unai Emery, the Villarreal manager, who was the Sevilla boss the night that Sevilla beat them in the Europa League final. And he said, as a footballer, they just wanted to be on their own. Jurgen Klopp doesn't do things that way. He got them all together, said, look, this is just the start. And he was right.
There's probably realities out of Klopp. He's thinking, I'm very reluctant to give up something as good as this, and we've spoken about this as well. Whoever replaces Guardiola and Klopp, it's going to be a really difficult job. Klopp may be thinking, well, where do I go from here? It's not going to get better than this, and I am this club in many ways. Well, even though he's too humble to say that, but he kind of is in a way.
Yeah, I only ever really felt that if he left Liverpool, it was just to take a break from football. It wasn't because a better job. In Jurgen Klopp's eyes, there is no better job in football right now. Could you see him being an international manager? Maybe in down the line, but he wouldn't have that day-to-day working with players.
If you're a Man United fan, David, I mean, obviously you're watching the game last night. Gary Neville absolutely battering the players for much of that game, and they're kind of ambling along to get a draw in a game that doesn't really matter against Chelsea. Then you see Man City and Liverpool fighting all these wars. You see Klopp sign a new contract, and just the contrast in terms of the rebuilding that Ten Hag has to do compared to where Klopp is quite stark.
Oh well, it's going to take years, and you do kind of feel sorry for whoever was coming in. Obviously, we know now it's Ten Hag. He's done great work at Ajax, but Manchester United is a different animal. He's got all sorts of problems to sort out. Players leaving, contracts obviously expiring. Other players don't want to be there. Obviously, the big question is what's he going to do with Ronaldo? He's obviously got 1 year left. Then this whole thing with Rangnick. Does he go upstairs? Is he going to take over Austria? How does his appointment work? All this. It's just such a big thing. And then, like you said there, you've got Liverpool and City going toe-to-toe in the Champions League and the Premier League. There's that great buzz and excitement. And, you've got your Manchester rivals, and then obviously your biggest rival, which is 30 miles down the road in Liverpool. It is a tough time for them. But look, they'll come good again, but it's just a case of how long is it going to take.
Just on Ronaldo briefly, Phil, you hear Keane and Redknapp talking about having a bit of a pop at people giving out about Ronaldo in the sense of what he's done to the team, but goals per 90 minutes in the Premier League this season, he's 0.67, he's 17 goals. Jota's 0.67, Sadio Mane is 0.51, Harry Kane is 0.39. Regardless of what you think of his role in the club, it's absolutely astonishing what he's achieving at this age.
Well, he was the only player on the pitch in the United jersey last night that looked like he was still playing for something. And it was the same actually last weekend against Arsenal, and it was remarkable given the week that he had that the death of his baby son, and he came in and he looked so sharp. And the same last night, took his goal really well. We know if Ronaldo gets chances, he's going to bury them. You mentioned Jota there, but Jota is part of a front three unit that functions so well.
Every other Man United offensive player has effectively flopped since Ronaldo came fully.
There's been glimpses of Sancho. I think Sancho is a player that will come good under Ten Hag. I know what you're saying in terms of with Liverpool and City streets ahead, but it's not going to take much for United to just basically re-establish themselves as either the third or fourth best team in the Premier League. We don't know how things are going to pan out for Chelsea this summer. But if you look at how bad United have been, if they had won at the Emirates last week, they were still in with a shout at the top four. So they're not going to be that bad under Ten Hag. Players are going to leave. He's going to bring in other players, and they'll start playing with a system. And what you need to see after a few months is, patterns of play that suggest which way that Manchester United are going to play. Under Solskjaer, you just knew that they were a very good counter-attacking team. Rannick's come in and he wants to play a certain way, but he doesn't have the players to do it. He wants to play a pressing game. But one thing United have struggled with over the years, and this was under even Jose Mourinho, fitness. They've never covered those numbers in terms of distance covered. They don't outrun teams the way the likes of Man City and Liverpool do. And that is just something that is a given now to compete with the best teams. You have to run.
You have to run, and the football kickoff is with Sky. All the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sport. And it's time to get to our first game, which is the first game of the weekend, Newcastle v Liverpool. David Meyler, this is a game Liverpool fans I think will definitely rightly be a little bit worried about. And just looking at some stats here, since Eddie Howe's actually had 23 games, Newcastle could actually make Europe still mathematically. That's how good they've been under Eddie Howe, which is quite incredible. They got up to the top half I think about a week ago. In the 23 post-Howe games, they've sixth in terms of points in the league, sixth in terms of points. Goals for, they're 13th. But what was a very striking stat to me was in terms of XG against, they're 7th in the table. So that's how many chances they're coughing up or not coughing up. And this is, I don't know, what do you make of this one? This is a really, really interesting one for Liverpool. David is gone. Phil, same question to you.
Yeah, look, do you know what? When the fixtures, when City and Liverpool were neck and neck and you were looking at the title run in, and Liverpool at the back-to-back games against United and Everton, traditionally two fixtures Liverpool fans don't like because, the rivalry. But it was actually Newcastle away and Tottenham home were the two games that I would have picked out where I thought... And look, people say, well, Spurs have just drawn 0-0 with Brighton and Brentford and haven't even had a shot on target. But Brighton and Brentford stopped Harry Kane and kind of sat in. Liverpool won't do that against Spurs, but Spurs have shown, like they did at the Etihad earlier this season, where if Kane gets space in the ball to pick out the likes of Kulusevski or Son in behind a high line, they can do damage. They're obviously still playing for something as well. Liverpool have a lot of games, but the Newcastle game, I actually think tomorrow is the pivotal day. It's judgment day in the title race. I think if either team are going to drop points, it's going to be away from home. Liverpool, they didn't have to travel. That's one benefit. But the way things are going to work out, if you're playing a Wednesday night Champions League game next season, you're not going to have a 12:30 game on Saturday. Jurgen Klopp has talked about this before, but they have to do it tomorrow. And Newcastle are unbeaten in 6. They've won their last 6 at St James's. They're going to love this because we know the plans Newcastle have. That in a few years, these are going to be title deciders in Newcastle's eyes because the investment they're going to have, whether people think it's right or wrong. So they're going to want to put one over in Liverpool to say, yeah, give it a few years and we'll be exactly where you are. We'll be challenging for titles. And Eddie Howe as well. A lot of people doubted him going in, and he's done a very good job there. They've brought in a few good players. Obviously, Bruno Guimaraes in midfield is really starting to shine now. So I think if Liverpool get over this game, then it piles the pressure onto City, who play Leeds at 5:30. The thing is, Liverpool's next 3 games, they're all before City play.
Yeah.
They have to win to keep the pressure on.
And Dave, what's interesting about Newcastle, David, is that as much as Eddie Howe has brought in these players, Trippier has obviously been injured. Chris Wood has barely scored. A lot of it just seems to be they're just in far better shape since he arrived.
Yeah, definitely. And look, it was the right appointment. The time had come for Steve Bruce. I think everything was just so dour. He's managed to obviously bring in Taggart, Dan Burn, Guimaraes, and he's just lifted the place. I watched an interview he did with John Joe Shelby recently, or Sky did with John Joe Shelby, where he spoke about how on the first day the manager came in and he gave everyone a piece of paper and he asked them to write down their wife and kids' names and all their birthdays. And John Joe said he was kind of fascinated by it, and he's obviously, built this togetherness within the squad. He's obviously come with new ideas and fresh ideas. because like I said, it was at the point where it had gone stale. And you can just see that, and they've won their last 4 Premier League games, which is unheard of. At the start of the season, we probably all tipped them to go down. So there is a real good feel factor. But looking at the game, I just think there's too many levels to it, and I think the way Liverpool are playing at the moment, I don't think it really bothers them that it's at 12:30. They're just, every game is kind of rolling into from one to the next. I fully expect Liverpool to go there and have, like, it won't be easy, but I expect them to make it comfortable towards the end. I fully expect them to go and win the game comfortably.
Big shout, yeah. It's going to be a fascinating one in the title race. I just feel this is a massive game for Liverpool. It's an early kick-off. Sky Sports 5:30 though, the later kick-off. Leeds versus Man City. And Leeds, obviously, Phil, have just become a team that is almost entirely different since Bielsa left. They've become hard to beat. They're battling hard. The problem is that's not going to work alone against Man City, who know that essentially the ball is still in their court in terms of the title race. And they'll also know what's required at that stage, as you mentioned, Liverpool in the early kick-off. Yeah,
absolutely. Look, Leeds are unbeaten in 5 under Jesse Marsh, and like you said, they've tightened up. They've back-to-back clean sheets. I didn't think at any stage on Monday night against Palace they looked like they were going to win the game, but the encouraging thing for Jesse Marsh and Leeds fans was they dug in. And look, they're not going man for man like they were under Bielsa. They zonally defend now, but they just didn't create enough. Daniel James ran channels. He ran covered every blade of grass in Sellers Park, but just barely got on the ball. Now, Elland Road will be absolutely rocking tomorrow, regardless of what happens. Like, Leeds have their own worries. They don't care what Man City are there for. Leeds need to pick up points. I think if Leeds had beaten Palace on Monday, I would have been nearly 99% confident they'd stay up. I'm still confident. I know you look at their fixtures coming up. They have obviously City tomorrow, they've Arsenal, they've Chelsea. Sometimes those fixtures can look very bad on paper, but at this time of the season you can actually pick up points because, say for example, Chelsea, all they're doing really is just to make sure they finish third and they're saving themselves for an FA Cup final. Arsenal, even though they're going for top 4, they're missing a few players. So look, Leeds will just try and make things hard for City, and that the home crowd will be just hoping that the longer the game goes on, if they don't concede early, they can build themselves or work their way into the game, and who knows, they might be able to nick something. They took 4 points off City last season, but they got an absolute thumping at the Etihad earlier.
Lost 7-0. They've actually a great record against Leeds at home, against Man City at home. Not that you necessarily read too much into that. I think, David, the point here is they have to score.
No, they have to. It's going to be, look, that's the thing, is you look at all those games were under Bielsa that we speak about. They're kind of reference. And now obviously Jesse Marsh has come in. He's kind of changed the philosophy a bit there. He still wants to do this high pressing and that, but they're definitely a bit more defensive. Obviously they've done well in recent games. He's obviously got them on a good little bit of run. You kind of look at it, but I'm still in the mindset, like as I said with Liverpool and Newcastle, I expect Liverpool to go and win comfortably. I expect City to go. I just feel the way the two teams are playing at the moment, I don't think I don't think there's any team that can stop them. I just feel that they're playing such good football. Confidence is high, and they know that this is the pressure moment. They're battling on all fronts, and they can't afford to slip up.
This brings us on to Sunday's, the first fixture of the Sunday that we're going to talk about, and that is Everton versus Chelsea. Two teams with contrasting kind of situations at the moment. Both wearing blue, and that's pretty much it. It's 2 p.m. on Sky Sports, live commentary on OTB Sunday with Stephen Doyle and Brian Kerr. Stick with you on this, David. It doesn't look good for Everton at the moment. Watched Chelsea last night. They absolutely battered Man United for the greater part without being overly bothered about winning the game. I think, as Phil alluded to there, it was a performance that kind of sets them up. They wouldn't have probably given 100% last night. They should be fresh for Sunday. What do you make of it?
You worry for Everton at this moment. Obviously they've got a game in hand on Burnley, but Chelsea last night were very good. It was probably just that that last part of being clinical. If Kai Havertz fancied it, he could have probably had 2 or 3 goals. Obviously the Ronaldo goal is just Ronaldo, but Everton will be worried. They've got 2 big games coming up against Chelsea and Leicester. If they could get through those, I feel matched up with Burnley, if they're in the same position, then I do think Everton could then potentially overtake Burnley, but at the moment there's kind of a lack of fight in them.
When you say that,
games.
just the way they perform against Liverpool, do you expect them now they're at home to completely throw that out the window? Because it was obviously very negative. It was a means to an end, but they're playing at home here. Are they going to change and come out and actually play?
Well, you'd expect them to. Obviously, playing against Liverpool is one thing. They try to frustrate them. They try to waste time and that. I can't see them going into the Chelsea game and doing that. Certainly with Frank's, love and affiliation with Chelsea, he's not going to want to do that, is he? He's going to want to go and make it, intense, get after the Chelsea players. Because obviously, like Phil touched on, Chelsea are kind of in no man's land at the moment. They're not going to, catch City or Liverpool. They're kind of just playing out this season, waiting for the FA Cup final. The players will have one eye on that. They'll want to win that. So it's kind of it's a tricky situation for Chelsea. And then obviously Everton are fighting for their lives. But you're looking at Everton throughout the entire season. They've not been able to put a string of results together. Okay, they've been better at home, but you would worry for them.
He mentions at home as well, Phil, like Goodison, possibly the most atmospheric ground in the league. It will be a help to them Sunday. They could feasibly carry them through and to finish in the top 17, as it were, and at least the place will be rocking. Yeah,
and in fairness to the Everton fans, they haven't turned on the team because they know the seriousness.
They could have had, as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, there was a few moments when Rafa Benitez was there, but they realise how the severity of what's at stake here, that Everton cannot get relegated. Like, some clubs can cope with relegation. I just don't think Everton can, because the amount of money they've spent. Well, the amount of money they've spent, the new stadium, all that, like, everything is at stake here. There's players that are on serious contracts. There wouldn't be relegation clauses put into these contracts, because when they signed them, there was no talk. They were looking up. They were thinking, how do we break into European places? Let's try and start off with the Europa League, and then we can go to our new stadium and maybe we can dream of playing in the Champions League. That's all gone now. But if they go down to the Championship, it's an absolute disaster for the club. So,
briefly, it's his third job, Lampard. How important is this?
If they go down with him, like, he's ruined. Even if he keeps them up. And does he take any pride that he said, I kept Everton in the Premier League? I mean, do they keep him on for next season if he keeps them up? Look, he'd be able to say, I want to bring in certain players, because there is a few players there that are worth keeping. I know he was in the headlines for the wrong reasons last weekend, Anthony Gordon, but he's been one of the very few positives for Everton this season. I'm thinking back to the United game and the Newcastle game, where Everton managed to eke out 1-0 wins, and they don't look like scoring too many goals. So can you see them keeping a clean sheet against Chelsea? I'm not sure. And then the pressure. I feel if Burnley win away to Watford tomorrow, like, that just cranks up the pressure on Everton. I know Everton still have to go to Watford as well. Watford can't buy a win at home. But if because Burnley beat Everton a few weeks ago, this is when Dyche was still there, we all expected them to go to Norwich and win, and they tripped up. So Burnley are now starting to move nicely. They got their win last week. Everyone expects them to win against Watford tomorrow. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. 4:30
on Sunday will stay with you, Phil. West Ham versus Arsenal. West Ham obviously will have to gather themselves up after the defeat last night in the Europa League. Live commentary on OTB Sunday with Nathan Murphy, and as I said, it's 4:30 on Sky Sports.
Yeah, I think this is a nice time for Arsenal to play West Ham, given they're smack bang in the middle of the semi-finals, and they were unlucky last night that they hit the woodwork 3 times and conceding a goal. Like, this is David Moyes talking the build up to the game. This is one of the biggest moments of his career, and 2 minutes in, they're a goal down. They recover, they got back to 1-1. Look, they're 2-1 down, but they've had some good away performances this season in Europe, so that's not dead in the water yet. But it's hard to imagine that they wouldn't have their eye on that game on Sunday. And you can definitely tell by looking at them, the season is starting to catch up with them, and they've a very good first 11, but they've obviously picked up a few injuries. I still think what David Moyes is doing with this team is unbelievable. Phenomenal. It's like, everyone looks at last season. I think it's been equally impressive this season, because he's managed a European campaign on top of it.
And for Arsenal as well, obviously, David, like, this is what are they? A couple of points ahead of Spurs. Still 5 games to go. It is obviously a 2-horse race now for 4th. This is a massive one.
No, it is. Obviously, then Arsenal obviously had the benefit of no European football. I know Arteta's kind of mixing and matching with the young boys at the top end of the pitch, but certainly they'll feel that they can go to West Ham and get a result. Obviously, they had a positive one against United and Chelsea. It's like as Phil touched on there.
We've just briefly lost David. Phil touched on there, he was going to praise one of the comments you made. But in fairness to it, like, they lost their first 3 games, Arsenal. There was a little bit of pressure on Arteta, well, rightly or wrongly. There's a definite shape to the way they play. Odegaard in the middle is a beautiful footballer. You can see he's moulding a team into some sort of shape of himself, and effectively in the way he wants them to play.
Yeah, well, I think with Arsenal, I remember we talked about this a few months ago when they were after getting themselves in the box seat to finish top 4, and I kind of felt if they kept everyone fit, they'd be okay. But obviously Tierney got injured, now Partey is out. So what Arteta has done is he's got a decent first 11. Now you have to build the depth, and that takes time. It was crazy after 3 games. I feel with Arteta, if he has 2 or 3 bad results, all the questions get asked. But that's just unfortunately the way modern football is, that you seem to be 2 or 3 defeats away from almost being written off.
It's almost like he's too handsome, David, and he dresses so well. It's like you're not a football manager, and clearly he is.
Sorry there, no, I just missed you. You're on about Arteta, yeah?
Yeah, briefly, just concluding on this game. Like, he obviously, I was saying to David, they lost their first 3 games, but it's been a very good season for them since.
Yeah, and look, it was always going to be difficult for them coming from Manchester City. Obviously, they've had the benefit of no European football. But I think he's done an incredible job. You look at the squad he has, obviously the front players with Martinelli, Odegaard, Smith-Rowe, Saka, obviously getting rid of Aubameyang. You know, a lot of Arsenal fans are on the fence over that. I think it was the right decision, because obviously there was a problem. Lacazette has stepped up, okay. He's kind of led the line for them, and he's helped these young boys. But I think he's done a really good job. Obviously next year the pressure is going to be on him to kick on. Certainly if they finish in the top 4, you're really going to see what Arsenal are made of and what Arteta is made of. Because whether they're in the Champions League or the Europa League, he's going to have European football to contend with as well.
And briefly, David, a game that really doesn't matter at all, even though Manchester United, we just seem to talk about Manchester United more than anyone, even though they've been a complete irrelevance really for the last few years at this stage. They're playing Brentford at 8 p.m. Sky Sports on Monday. It's incredible look at the table, David, in terms of the chasm between the top 2 and everyone else. The goal difference of Man City is 59. The goal difference of Liverpool is 63. The goal difference of Man United is 2.
Yeah, well, that says enough, doesn't it? You look at Ronaldo, 17 Premier League goal last year, and you're thinking, like, what's next to him? Bruno, I think he's on 8. Like, that just tells you, how much they've struggled. They've not been able to keep clean sheets. I know my old pal Harry Maguire's come under a lot of flack over his performances, but it's not just him. You look at Varane, Lindelof, Wan-Bissaka, Dalot, Telles, Shaw, all of them. There's moments when De Gea has saved them. Obviously, even last night in the game against Chelsea, he made a couple of great saves. But it's just, that's the beauty of United. But they're coming up against a Brentford team who are in good form. You know what I mean? And they'll relish. Those players will look at it. A lot of them probably be the first time playing at Old Trafford. You'll be excited, and you've no doubt that Thomas Frank will believe they can get a result there. And if they did, would any of us be surprised?
The Eriksen story as well, so cool. Like,
yeah, absolutely. I think with United, they just need the season to end, and that's.
I remember the New York Jets, when I used to be a Jets fan. They always used to say JETS, just end the season. And it's been like that for Harry Maguire and Man United, actually. For United,
and look, the reason they announced Ten Hag just to give them, it's a bit of hope, and it basically says, look, this season is pretty much a write-off, but Erik Ten Hag is somebody that is going to try and bring back the good times. In terms of Brentford, Eriksen's signing has worked out so well for them. I also think as well the return of the goalkeeper Raya, because he was very influential at the start of the season. His distribution, if you play in front of a keeper that you're a bit iffy about,
totally,
it completely changes how you defend, because you're afraid if a ball goes over, what's the keeper going to do? Whereas Raya's back, and I don't think it's a coincidence that Brentford have picked up when he's come back and obviously Eriksen has just added the little bit of X factor as well.
And it being Man United, something dramatic will happen on Monday night. That's 8 o'clock on Sky Sports. Football kick-off with Sky. All the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sport. And the football kick-off 5-side team. Each week we'll ask you on Instagram to choose your 5-side team made up of players competing in our selected games. This week, Jordan Pickford v Mendy. Mendy won. Rafael Varane versus Pontus Jansson. Varane won. Bruno Gomes versus Fabinho. Fabinho won. Rafinha versus Phil Foden. Foden won. And Jared Bowen versus Bukayo Saka. Saka won. And that was today's show. Thanks for watching. Thanks to Phil and David, and we'll be back next week.